Reverend Jackson, welcome to our airwaves.
Always going to be with you.
Dr. King, to me, is the greatest American, and I'm particularly fascinated by a man who could reach such heights, but when he came back from receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, he stopped off in the Harlem Armory, and he talked about the least of these among us, and he talked about the parable with Jesus. Do you find that concept lacking in today's leadership?
Well, that is our constant challenge, to measure life by how we treat the miserable bottom up, not just the privileged to top down. Jesus says that we measure character by how we treat the least of these. And today, while we have midday in our politics, it's midnight in our economy. And there are so many people who are jobless and homeless, and many are hopeless. And it becomes our challenge now to make certain that the healthcare plan includes the least able among us. The education plan includes all of us, not just those who can afford it financially. That's why it's important that we end our investment in war abroad and invest at home, because we'll be measured ultimately by how we treated those whose backs were against the wall.
And it's long been my contention that Dr. King would not have made the I Have a Dream speech at the end of his life. We're close to Riverside Church here, and 1 year to the day before he was assassinated in Memphis, he came out against the war in Vietnam. When he brought his struggle up to the north, he was hit by a brick, I believe in Decatur, Illinois. In Chicago. And the night before, when he went to Memphis on April 3rd, he was under a lot of pressure. In fact, the tornadoes were so bad that they killed 5 people that night and destroyed 40 homes. But when he got the call to go to speak that night, it was something. Could you tell us about that?
I was there. You know, that day he had determined not to go that night because we had been besieged and we were marching. He was tired. And Reverend Abernathy and I went over to the church, Mason Temple Church of God in Christ. And there were only about 2,000 people in the church. It seats 8,000. When we walked in the door, people began to scream and shout. And Dr. Abernathy said, "They think Martin is with us. It's not for us." And we laughed. Went to the back of the church and the front of the church, and we called Dr. King on the phone. Bernard Lee answered the phone. So, "Doc, if you would just come and just wave your hand. The people want to see you so badly." He said, "Well, I'll come." And that's when he gave the mountaintop address on that night. A lot of drama in his life, but he knew that it was his mission to change the law. We live in our faith, we live under the law. He had to change the laws in which we live, and to change those Southern segregationist laws, to change those race, gender laws around the country. To fight a war without a moral foundation became the hallmark of his life. And though he was slayed, he did not bow. And from his crucifixion, a whole new world has been resurrected. So he defined our time with those courageous, sacrificial actions. And now today, his last campaign was not the Vietnam War, it was the Poor People's Campaign. The day with 47 million Americans without health care, it's about that. Children in school who do not have reading glasses, do not have hearing assistance, who cannot afford computers. There are 2.3 million Americans in prison, 1 million are black, 500,000 are Latino, the most jail population in the whole world. That from Texas, from Virginia around to Texas, the number one industry in any given state is the jail industrial complex for profit, locking up people for a profit and locking them out of school because they cannot afford to pay the student rate loan. That's abominable. And that's why this struggle continues. We did a good work last year in electing President Barack Obama, but the work to even the playing field and make the roles public and clear is an ongoing struggle. So I say you cannot live off of the fumes of last year's victories. We need gas for this day, our daily bread.
Thank you, Reverend Jackson.
Keep hope alive.